they followed someone else again. You felt it before you could name it. That cold shift in the room, the moment the conversation organized itself around a different person and you became background noise. You had the better idea, you did the work. And none of it mattered, because something in that room made a decision about you before you opened your mouth. And you still don't know what it was. That is not bad luck. That is a signal problem, and it is completely fixable. 500 years ago, Niccolo Machiavelli sat in exile outside Florence, stripped of his position, forbidden from politics, reduced to a farm he didn't want. And he wrote the most dangerous document in history. Not because it was evil, because it was honest. He had spent decades watching brilliant men get destroyed and inferior men build empires. He wanted to know why. What he found was not what anyone wanted to hear. People don't follow the most deserving. They follow the person whose presence answers one question. Their nervous system is always asking, has this already been decided? Is this person already in charge? And the answer to that question is set before you speak, before you present, before you prove anything. It is set by a signal you are broadcasting right now, in every room you enter, that most people never learn to control. Today, that changes. These are the 8 principles Machiavelli identified that make following you feel like the only rational move. Not the kind thing, not the nice thing, the only logical one. Drop this in the comments right now. I am done being background noise. Number 1, you cannot ask for authority. You have to already have it. Most people believe authority is something you earn and then receive. You work hard enough, prove yourself long enough, accumulate enough credibility, and eventually, someone hands it to you. That is the lie. That is the invisible fence keeping you exactly where you are. Authority is not handed, it is read. The brain reads it in the first 4 seconds of contact, before a single word has been exchanged, and files a position that almost nothing you do afterward will fully override. The question it is answering is not, is this person qualified? It is, does this person already believe they belong here? And most people answer that question wrong every single day without knowing it. There was a man, call him James, who ran a team of 12 for 6 years. His performance reviews were spotless. His team liked him. He was passed over for senior director 3 times. After the 3rd time, he cornered his VP in the hallway and asked why. The VP looked uncomfortable. Then he said, "James, every time you walk into a room, you look like you're waiting for the room to decide if you're welcome." 6 years, spotless reviews. And the room never decided he was welcome, because James never decided it first. Most people are James. They prepare harder. They build the case. They wait for confirmation before they commit. And their waiting is the answer. It tells every brain around them that permission has not yet been granted. The follower brain reads that signal and categorizes accordingly. This is not a leader. This is someone who needs to be led. The shift is not in your words. It is not in your confidence level or your wardrobe or how loud you speak. It is in one internal decision you make before you walk through any door. You are not there to audition. The role is already yours. You are simply showing up to perform it. Make that decision. Watch the room change. Not because you became more qualified. You were already qualified. Because you stopped broadcasting the signal that said you weren't sure. Number 2, whoever sets the frame has already won before anyone speaks. Every conversation has a hidden layer underneath it, a set of assumptions so deep most people never notice them. assumptions about whose position is legitimate, whose judgment is credible, what questions are even valid to ask. That layer is called the frame, and whoever sets it owns the entire conversation before it begins. This is why sharp people lose to less sharp people all the time. The sharp person had the better argument, the other person had the better frame. The sharp person walked into a box that had already been built and started arguing from inside it. The less sharp person built the box. Machiavelli documented this everywhere he looked. The advisors who survived the longest were not the ones with the best information. They were the ones who controlled what information meant, who set the terms by which everything else was evaluated. Here is what it looks like in your life. You walk into a meeting and a senior person challenges your proposal. The challenge sounds reasonable, but embedded in it is a frame. Your work must justify itself to me, and I am the appropriate judge. If you start defending, if you pull out your data and build your case and wait for their approval, you have accepted that frame completely. You are the defendant. They are the jury. You might win the argument. You have already lost the power dynamic. Most people accept frames automatically. They walk in, feel the shape of the room, and adapt to it. That adaptation feels like social intelligence. It is actually submission. One sentence. The more important question here is whether we solve this before Q3 or after. A pause, a single question that turns the weight back. What outcome are you hoping this leads to? The challenge evaporates. The conversation is now happening on ground you chose, not ground you inherited. That is not aggression. That is architecture. You built the room while they were still talking. Do that consistently, and people stop testing whether you will flinch. They start asking what you think, because your frame holds, and theirs doesn't. Drop this in the comments. I set the frame. Number 3. Make your attention expensive. Watch your worth multiply. There's a currency that determines social hierarchy more precisely than any title, any credential, any salary. It is attention. The rule that governs it has no exceptions. Whoever gives more of it is always below whoever receives more of it. The person at the center of that monitoring, the one everyone is angling toward, that is the authority in the room. Not because of what they know, because of what their scarcity signals. Most people hand their authority away before they open their mouths. They respond to everything immediately. They volunteer enthusiasm before it is asked for. They match every energy that enters the room. They fill every silence. And they cannot understand why people treat them as ordinary, when ordinary is exactly what constant availability broadcasts. Think about your phone right now. How many messages did you reply to within 2 minutes this week? How many times did you reach out when you could have waited for them to come to you? Every one of those reflexes sent a signal, and that signal said the same thing every time. I am here, waiting, ready to be needed, which is the signal of someone who needs to be needed, which is the signal of someone below. Machiavelli warned that the prince who makes himself too accessible destroys his own gravity. Not because distance is power, it isn't, but because when you are everywhere, you are nowhere. When your attention costs nothing, it is worth nothing. That is supply and demand applied to human presence. You cannot argue with it. You can only use it. Go cold on availability, not as a game, not as a tactic you perform for 2 weeks, and abandon as the genuine expression of someone whose attention is actually occupied with something of value when it is not on them. And when you do finally give someone your full presence, let it land as what it is, something they earned, something scarce, something worth moving toward again. Most people will never do this. They are addicted to being needed in the moment. You are going to be needed in the room, which is a different thing entirely. Number 4. The moment you flinch in public, you lose ground, you never fully get back. Nobody follows hesitation, not because people are cruel, because the brain that followed a hesitating leader got eaten. 200,000 years of survival programming says, when the person in front moves like they're not sure, get ready to move without them. Most leaders learn this too late. Usually in one specific ordinary moment they did not know would define them. There was a director, sharp, respected, 3 years of strong performance, who got pulled into an emergency board presentation after a project missed badly. He had the numbers, he had the explanation. But under pressure, in front of the room, he qualified his previous recommendations. He said, maybe we need to revisit. He looked for exactly 90 seconds, like he was figuring out whose fault to make it. Like he was calculating the political cost of being accountable. His team watched that happen. They did not leave. They did not stop performing. But something changed in the room that day that never changed back. They stopped leaning forward when he spoke and started waiting to see which way the wind blew before they committed. The loyalty was still technically there. The trust had quietly restructured itself around something more conditional. He lost 90 seconds. He spent the next 18 months trying to recover ground that never fully came back. Machiavelli wrote that men judge far more by what they see than what they know. What they see most vividly, what overrides everything else in the hierarchy of signals, is how your face looks when the ground moves. Not your face on the easy days, your face on the day the project fails, the client leaves, the team morale collapses, the budget gets cut in half. That is the data point they trust. That is what gets filed permanently. You do not have to feel calm, feel whatever you feel. But your face belongs to your team, not to your anxiety. The decision is already made. The direction is already chosen. The doubts live inside you. And they live there alone. One moment of visible stillness under genuine fire does more for your authority than years of smooth administration. One moment. People will tell that story. It will do work for you long after you've forgotten it. While most people are still waiting for a moment that feels heroic enough to be still in, you can build that mythology, starting in the next hard conversation you have. If this is landing in a place most content doesn't reach, subscribe and turn on notifications. Number 5. Name the real enemy. Your people will never question who their leader is. Most leaders are terrified of the truth in the room. They see the real threat, the competitor genuinely eating their market, the dysfunction genuinely bleeding the team, the hard fact sitting in the middle of every meeting that everyone can feel and nobody will say. And they soften it. They sand the edges. They present a version of reality that lets everyone stay comfortable, including themselves. And the people in the room feel it. They feel the gap between what was said and what is true. And they file the leader in the category of people who cannot be fully trusted to see clearly, which is the same category as people who cannot be fully followed. Most people spend their entire leadership careers in this category without knowing it. They are liked. They are respected in a general sense. But when something genuinely difficult arrives, people look past them, instinctively, automatically, toward whoever is willing to name the thing. There was a VP of sales at a mid-sized company whose team had been missing targets for 2 quarters. He ran meeting after meeting, focused on process improvements, pipeline hygiene, activity metrics. The team was engaged. Nothing changed. Then one Tuesday he walked in, closed his laptop and said, "We are losing to a competitor who is faster than us, and we have been pretending otherwise for 6 months. That is the actual problem. Here is what we are going to do about it." The room went quiet. Then something shifted, not because the problem was new. Everyone already knew it. But because for the first time, someone in authority was willing to stand in the truth of it without flinching. By Wednesday, his team was moving differently. By the end of the quarter, they had closed the gap. He did not inspire them. He did not motivate them. He simply told the truth in a room where the truth had been avoided, and the contrast alone was enough to make him the fixed point every person in that room organized around. That is available to you in your next meeting. Not inspiration, not motivation. The courage to describe what is actually happening. Most people will not do it. You are going to. Drop this in the comments. I say what others won't. Number 6. Kindness without standards builds followers who vanish when you need them. Here is where every modern leadership framework quietly fails you. They tell you to lead with empathy, to create psychological safety, to celebrate people, make them feel valued, build trust through generosity. None of that is wrong, but stripped of its counterweight, it produces something that looks like loyalty and functions like wet paper the moment real pressure arrives. Followers who like you and followers who respect you are two different populations. They look identical during easy seasons. The difference only becomes visible when something must be sacrificed, when a hard call must be made, when the comfortable path leads somewhere wrong. In that moment, the followers who like you calculate their options. The followers who respect you are already moving. Machiavelli asked directly, "Is it better to be loved or feared?" His answer is always quoted and almost always truncated. Yes, he said, fear is more reliable than love, because love is held in place by obligation, and men break obligation the moment it costs them something. But read the full passage. He does not say be feared. He says the truly capable prince achieves something neither love nor fear fully delivers. He is respected. And respect has a specific mechanism that most leaders have never been taught. Think about the one teacher, the one coach, the one manager who genuinely changed what you were capable of. Were they the most encouraging person in the room? Almost certainly not. They were the one who looked at your work and said, "This is not good enough yet," and meant it, and waited, and held the standard until you actually cleared it. You did not enjoy that at the time, but something in you that was dormant activated under that pressure. And somewhere in how you think about that person now, underneath whatever complicated feelings exist, there is something that functions like gratitude. That is what a real standard does. It tells people something rare. You are capable of more than you are currently producing, and I am not going to pretend otherwise to make this moment comfortable. That is not cruelty. That is one of the deepest forms of respect available. It says, I take you seriously enough to require something real from you. The leader who accepts anything builds a team that produces anything. The leader who holds the line builds a team that knows what the line means, and a team that knows what the line means, that has felt the weight of a real standard, will run through walls when the moment requires it, because they know it means something, because you taught them that it does. Most leaders never get there. They trade the discomfort of holding the standard for the comfort of being liked. They get liked. You are going to get followed. Number 7. Stop justifying your decisions. Start revealing your thinking. There is a difference between explaining yourself and revealing yourself. It is one of the most critical distinctions in leadership, and almost no one knows it. They blur into each other in the moment, and most people make the wrong choice, automatically, every time, and call it transparency. Explanation is defensive. Underneath every unsolicited explanation is the same hidden message. I was not sure you would accept this, so here is my case for why you should. You may not intend that message, but every brain in the room receives it. And every time they receive it, they update their model of you in the same direction. This is someone who needs our agreement before they can move, which means our agreement has leverage, which means we should test how much. Watch what happens in most meetings. A leader makes a decision. Before anyone challenges it, they start explaining it, justifying the timeline, defending the trade-offs, preemptively addressing objections no one raised. They think they are building alignment. They are actually opening a negotiation, and the team, reading the room with the precision of people who spend 8 hours a day in it, leans in, not to align, but to negotiate. Because the leader just showed them that negotiation was on the table. Revelation is different. It is not defensive. It does not seek agreement. It says, here is how I see this situation. The variables I weighted, the order of priority I applied, the future I was positioning for. Not please agree, not here is why I am right. Just here is the architecture of how I think. Watch it work. Machiavelli understood that the prince who shares his reasoning with his inner circle does not weaken his authority. He deepens it. Because now every person in that room carries a piece of how their leader thinks. They can serve the vision without being managed step by step. They can make decisions in the field that align with the center because they understand the center. Not just the rules, but the logic underneath the rules. And they stay. Because people do not leave someone they are still learning from. The leaders who are followed most completely are not the ones who seem most infallible. They are the ones who seem most worth understanding. When the people around you think watching this person work through a problem is worth my time, you have stopped being a manager they report to. You have become someone they want to stay close to. That is loyalty that does not need to be renewed every morning. That is the kind that stays. Drop this in the comments. I lead with my thinking, not my title. Number 8. Inconsistency kills authority, silently, and it never announces itself until it is too late. This is the one Machiavelli returned to more than any other. Not cruelty, not strategy, not vision, consistency. Because he watched it happen over and over. Brilliant men, strong men, men who understood power, undone not by enemies, but by the slow erosion of their own standards, not all at once, one exception at a time, one compromise at a time, each one invisible, until the foundation was gone and they couldn't understand why the building fell. The prince who is sometimes harsh and sometimes lenient teaches his people one thing. Outcomes depend on luck, not behavior. The prince who holds his standard on Tuesday and moves it on Friday teaches his people that the standard is negotiable. And the people who learn that the standard is negotiable do not follow it. They probe it, constantly, to find where the real edge is. Think about every team you have watched stop performing, not in a dramatic collapse, just a slow drift. Deadlines became suggestions, commitments became approximations. The same conversation kept having to be had. From the outside, it looks like a culture problem, a motivation problem, a talent problem. Almost always, it is a consistency problem. Somewhere upstream, the standard moved. Maybe once, maybe with good reason. But the people around it registered the movement, updated their model, and started operating in the world where the standard moves. There was a manager, genuinely good, genuinely cared, who made one exception for his top performer, let a missed deadline slide, because the work, when it came, was excellent. Fair enough. Except the next month, 2 other people missed their deadlines. When he held them to it, both pushed back. The top performer doesn't have to hit the date, they said. Why do we? He spent the next 4 months trying to explain the difference. The team never fully bought it, because the data they had was simple. The rule moved once, which means it can move again, which means the rule is not a rule. One exception, 4 months of erosion. That is how fast the foundation cracks when you let it. Machiavelli called it this: a prince must either maintain his standard completely or abandon it completely. Half measures teach the worst lesson of all, that resistance produces exceptions, and a team that learns resistance produces exceptions will resist everything, every time, to find out if this is one of the times. Be the same person on the hard day that you were on the easy one. Hold the standard when it is inconvenient to hold it, especially when it is inconvenient. Because that is the moment everyone is watching. That is the moment they are taking notes. That is the moment that determines permanently whether your standards are decorative or structural, whether you are someone to be managed or someone to be followed. What you now know that most people never will. Machiavelli died in disgrace. The Medici never hired him back. The republic he loved was never restored. He spent the last years of his life running a minor lumber business while the most important political minds of the age ignored him, and 500 years later, everyone who has ever held power has read his book. He was not teaching manipulation. He was not teaching cruelty. He was doing the thing no one else would do, refusing to describe the world as it should be, and describing it as it actually is. The world does not reward the most deserving. It follows the most certain. It does not give loyalty to the most prepared. It gives it to the most legible. It is not looking for the person who is right. It is looking for the person who already knows what they are doing and does not need the room's agreement to keep doing it. You have been waiting for the world to see what you are worth. Doing the work. Being ready. Expecting that one day the recognition would arrive. It was never going to arrive. Not because you aren't worth it. Because merit is not what the room is measuring. It never was. You were answering a question no one was asking, while the actual question went unanswered. You know the actual question now. You know what the room is measuring before you speak, how frames get set and who sets them, what consistency costs and what it builds, why standards matter more than kindness, and why revelation matters more than justification. You know what most people around you will never know. Not because they couldn't learn it, but because no one told them to look. Here is what that means. The next room you walk into is different, not because you changed your skills, because you changed your signal. And the signal is what the room responds to. It always was. The people who passed you over were not evil. They were reading the signal you were sending. Now you send a different one. Now the room reads something different. Now the calculation they run comes out different. And following you stops being a choice they make, and starts feeling like the only thing that makes sense. That is what Machiavelli spent his life trying to say. Authority is not taken. It is not earned. It is installed into the nervous systems of the people around you, repetition by repetition, standard by standard, signal by signal, until following you feels less like a decision and more like gravity. You were always the person who deserved the room. Now you are the person the room was built for. The question is whether they will find out while you're still in it, or whether you'll be gone by the time they figure out what they had. If this hits somewhere that other content doesn't reach, hit the like button. Subscribe if you are not here yet. And turn on notifications, because this channel is where the actual mechanics live, not the comfortable version of them. Drop a comment below. Which of these 8 is the one you've been violating without knowing it? I read everyone.